Hello, my name is Martina and welcome back to my channel. So, it's officially fall season. That means it's time to discuss my fall TBR. I'm super excited. I love this season so much, but also I just love making a list of books I want to read. It just looks so beautiful and talking about them is even more exciting. So, yeah, let's get into all the books I plan to read this fall season. Hopefully, I finish all of them. I might not, but regardless, it's exciting to think about all the books I want to read that are very spooky, fall themed. They have all the vibes for fall. And yeah, let's get into it. First book, of course, is Immortal Dark. This one I had in a reading vlog earlier that I started reading it, but it was just too dark and intense. Like it really fit for October. So in October, I plan to read Immortal Dark. It's described as Cruel Prince means Night House, and it's like in a dark academia setting. And the people in here is like humans who are bonded with vampires, and somehow they get powers by that. And we have this girl who's trying to find her sister that she think a vampire killed, and the vampire she think killed her sister is who she's teaming up with. So that sounds intense. That sounds dramatic, and I'm here for that. Darling House. I meant to read this last year, but I didn't get to it last year. I think it was no, when I found out about it, it was in November, but I think this was released earlier than that. But I tried reading it last year in November, but I didn't get to it because I had so much other books I was reading at the time, and this one I didn't want to read this one in like winter. So I was like, no, I'll save it for next autumn. So this fall, I'm definitely going to read Starling House earlier so that I don't miss out on reading it this fall as well. I honestly don't really know what it's about. I know it's like a mansion and vampires. That's all I really know about it. And I want to go in blind. I like going into most of my books blind, especially when they're like fantasies. I like to not really know much. If I go into it not knowing much and it's kind of too confusing, then I'll go read the synopsis. That's the only time. Otherwise, I read the synopsis once if it interests me, and I'll pick up the book. And when I read it, then I'll read the synopsis if I really want to know more. I have talked about this one quite a lot. That is One Dark Window. I want to read this one. Hopefully October. I think it fits more for that. Yeah. One Dark Window is a dark gothic fantasy. It's focused on this girl who has a monster inside of her head. I don't know much else what happens in the book, but that's the main description a lot of people always say when they talk about this one. And that's really what got my interest in it anyway. So I'm reading it solely for that. Then I want to read An Academy for Liars. This will be my first Alexis Henderson book. She's well known since she released The Year of the Witching. I didn't get to read that book. I tried reading it like twice, but I don't know. I don't really like books about cults. So it was very uncomfortable for me to read. So I stopped reading. I DNF'd it. But this one is dark academia, and it's like all the students in the school, they're all chosen because they're gifted with this like magical skill of persuasion. So they're able to control people with this, and it also seems they're able to wield that skill like a weapon. So that sounds interesting. So I'm excited to read this one very soon, actually. In the Company of Witches. This one, a lot of booktubers are talking about it right now. I saw it years ago and I wanted to read it, but I saw that it was only a mass paperback, and I hate those so much. They're very hard to read. You see, I wear glasses. Like I can't read those. But I did buy it, the Kindle version of it, because I really want to read it. The more I hear about it, the more I'm like, that sounds up my alley. I want to read it. So I'm not gonna let the mass paperback stop me. So I got the Kindle version, and it's basically set in a bed and breakfast where this lady, she is a witch. I think she deals with talking to the dead or something of the sort relating to the dead. But her husband has recently passed away. And the main plot is that this lady bought the bed and breakfast just for her. And she turns up dead the next day or something. And everyone blames the main character's aunt because the aunt was very open about disliking this lady. So the main girl now, she's trying to prove that her aunt didn't do it and also solve the mystery of how this lady died. I also want to read When the Crowds Away. That's the second book in the series. I think it's only 2 books. It's not going to be more, but I'm not sure. But regardless, I want to read those 2. And finally, I promise you, I'm going to read The Night Circus. It's been years I've been attempting to read this book, but this time around, I feel it. I'm going to read it. I know I'm going to read it. I thought it was more of a winter book, but based on the covers of all of the versions of it, I always thought it was like winter. But when I did read it years ago, it actually was set in like October or something like that. So I'm gonna try and attempt to read it in October, maybe the end of October. I promise you, I'm gonna read it. The Night Circus is basically surrounding the circus that arrives without any warning, and it's like these two characters who are in a magical duel with each other. But what they don't know is that this duel can only be completed if one of them dies. So it's not good. It's not looking good for them because from what I remember, they kind of fall in love with each other. So I am going to reread it completely because I did get a good way through it years ago, but I don't have that great of a memory to know all the intense and whimsical words, you know? So I'm going to go from the start and get that whimsical feeling and the tension between these two characters. I really, really miss my girl Margaret Robinson writing. Like, why doesn't she release books every year? It's so sad. I love her so much. So that is why I'm going to reread An Enchantment of Ravens. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy with me right now because I told you I've misplaced a lot of my books since moving and all that. But I actually found where it is. My cousin has it. So I'm going to collect it from her and reread that because that's the first book I read from her because that's her debut book. And it really fits for fall. I'm going to definitely read it in October because the autumn vibes are so great in that one. And I really like reading those type of fairy books where the fairies are like dark and ugly. Like, I love reading those. So yes, I'm going to do a reread of An Enchantment of Ravens. I'm trying to find more fairy books like that aren't focused on the face being hot and sexy and, you know, romanticizing the face of it. I want something that kind of shows them more dark, you know? If you know any books that are like that I focus on more the whimsy, dark magical elements of phase, definitely recommend them to me and I'll see if I'll like it. Going into Tea Kingfisher now, I want to read What Moves the Dead and A Sorceress Comes to Call. I have no clue what Moves the Dead is about. I don't want to know. It's very short, so I'm gonna just go in completely blind. It is a horror book, like completely horror, no other genre mixed with it. So that will be like my first complete only a horror read, so I'm excited to do that. And then A Sorceress Comes to Call is more fantasy. It's more in my comfort zone, but I like T. Kingfisher's fantasies. They're more like on the dark side, but they're really good. I like reading them. So yeah, I'm gonna read this one and What Moves the Dead. Death at Morning House. This one is by a popular author. What was her name? Maureen Johnson. She wrote the Truly Devious series. I've never read that. I have no interest to read it, so never gonna read it. But this one, it has my interest a bit. So it's like a teenager who is doing a tour guide at this island. She ends up trying to solve this mystery surrounding Morning House, and it sounds cool. It sounds similar to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And since I know I like those type of storylines, I'm excited to read this one. And then I want to read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I do own the first two books in the Inheritance series, but I honestly have no interest in them. So not knowing how that's going to work out. I might get an interest in them later on down the line. The Naturals. It's focused on these teenagers who are in this FBI program centered around these teenagers with very special skills, and they're being tasked with solving infamous unsolved cases from years ago. This is described as Criminal Minds, but with teenagers, and I love that show so much. So obviously I want to read a book like it, so you know. I don't think it's going to be just like it. I think it's going to be more quirky and very unbelievable, but still very fast paced and interesting, you know? I just found out about this book. I know this author. I never been interested in anything by them before, but this one, The 13th Child, it's a gothic horror fantasy, and it's all about this girl. She's a young healer now, and her name is Hazel, but she is the goddaughter of death. She gets caught up in like this court intrigue where she has to basically save the life of this king before he dies because it seems she's able to tell when a person can die ahead of time. It sounds very good, and the reason why it's called a 13th child is because she is her parents' 13th child, and she's the most unimportant one that they gave away to a god, and I think the god was, you know, death, and it sounds interesting. I also found this one recently, and it's so pretty. I think I'm definitely gonna love this one. If I don't, I'll be so sad. It's called The Teller of Small Fortunes. Oh my goodness, it looks so cozy, doesn't it? It's described as a cozy fantasy mystery. It's centered around this lonely immigrant fortune teller who goes from village to village, and she ends up meeting like these people along the way. She has like a cat with her, I think. I don't remember what it was, what animal it was, but it's an animal, and you know I love animal companions, so I'm gonna definitely be there for that. That's really what all I know about it is like she's able to tell only small fortunes, and I don't know what else happened in that book, but it sounds really cozy and whimsy, so I'm here for it. And I want to read A Grave Robbery that's in the Veronica Speedwell series. This one is the second to last in the series. Next year, I think the last one's gonna release. So that's sad, but I really love this series. I've been reading it since I think May. Yeah, and I'm almost finished now. Because sometimes I'll read 2 books in 1 month, but some months I didn't read the series because I wanted to like savor it a bit, and also some of the books were kind of 3 stars, so I was like, let's give it a break and then come back to it, you know. But yeah, A Grave Robbery. I am currently reading this one, but nonetheless, I'm gonna put it on here because I just started yesterday, and that is Read Witch. It has such a beautiful cover. That's what caught my attention at first, and then I read the synopsis, and it was like, oh, if the synopsis reads like a movie, and the book itself definitely it's given movie vibes. Like I can see everything. Like I love the descriptive writing. But yeah, Read Witch, it's like surround this girl, this lady, she's about to turn 30. Her name is Belle Blackthorn. I really love her name, so I have to say it. And I think her full name is Belladonna Blackthorn, you know, and I recently read the Belladonna series, so I was like, ooh, I like that name. And she is a witch. But I like that in this book, the witches, they don't officially become witches until their 15th birthday. And they get their powers then. But she finds out of nowhere that she has to do this thing called the Ickawitch Trials when she's 30. Otherwise, if she doesn't do the trial or if she fails the trial, her powers will be taken away. And the reason for that is because she either didn't use her magic enough throughout her 15 years she's had it, or she used it for wrong reasons. And so far it's very witchy and cool, and it has such fall vibes because it's set in October. Her birthday is October 1st, so when she has to do the trial, it is on October 1st, and all of the book is going to be set during the October time period. And lastly, I want to read Caraval. I did read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy first because I tried reading Caraval a couple years ago and I didn't like it, solely because I despise one of the sisters, but I'm gonna push through because I didn't like the main sister. So I'm gonna try reading it again because I find that I really do like those type of books with like surrounding like a Caraval circus, like some performance like that. Because I think Caraval is not a circus, but it is like a big performance kind of set up like a circus, and it's like very far away and it moves around. That's really all I know about it, but I think I will like it. So I'm gonna try again and see this time if I like the series. Especially I saw that this new box set is coming out of these books, so they're so pretty. I want to try reading it first, and hopefully I love them, and then I can get that box set. So yeah, that's my fall autumn TBR. They are 17 books. I'm really excited to read them, and thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in my next one.